Okay, Dungeons and Dragons, they have this thing called Unearthed Arcana, and it sounds fancy, right? But it's basically a way that Wizards of the Coast, who are the people who make the game, right, they test out new ideas by sharing early versions with players just to kind of see what sticks. Think of it like a movie trailer, but for spells and character classes. Sometimes the stuff is actually quite great, and it ends up in official rulebooks, and then other times it's more like, hey, we tried, you hated it, we'll leave it, we'll park it right now. Back in May, they dropped a new version of a fan favourite class called the Hexblade Warlock. Now, I actually play a level 9 Hexblade Warlock, hence why I'm making this video, but a quick recap is a Warlock is like a moody spellcaster. They made a magical deal with a powerful being. The Hexblade one gets their powers from a creepy sentient weapon, which is basically like a cursed sword, but with attitude. But the new version, it didn't exactly get 5 stars. Okay. Didn't exactly get 5-star reviews. In fact, people didn't even like it. Imagine like if your favorite superhero kind of got rebooted and then suddenly couldn't do any of their cool stuff anymore. That's kind of how people were feeling regarding the Hexblade Warlock. So the D&D team, they were like, okay, we hear you. We're gonna like sort this out slightly. And they're giving it another shot. So they're reworking the Hexblade again, hopefully with fewer confusing rules and more of the spooky sword flinging fun that we actually want, right? So in D&D 5e, there's a class obviously called the Warlock. Now, if you're brand new, think of Warlocks as magical deal makers. They don't go to wizard school like they're nerdy bookworm types, but they make a pact with a powerful being, usually like a demon or a fey queen or an ancient spooky god, right? And boom, instant magic powers. Now, normally, Warlocks, they hang out sort of like at the back of the battle. They're flinging out spells like Eldritch Blast, which is like the magical version of a laser pointer that seriously hurts. They're all about curses and spooky vibes and just looking dramatically mysterious. But in 2017, a book called Xanathar's Guide to Everything dropped, and with it came the Hexblade Warlock. Now, this version said, what if Warlocks didn't stand in the back with the squishy wizards, and instead they made a deal with a creepy weapon from a shadow realm called the Shadowfell? Picture if Tim Burton directed an episode of Game of Thrones, and the result is your Hexblade Warlock, and they can now summon a magical sword out of nowhere, wear heavier armor without looking like they borrowed it from a paladin, and then they actually fight up close without just getting instantly KO'd by a goblin with a stick. It was basically, what if a warlock was also kind of like a sword-wielding superhero, and then it quite literally changed the game. But back in May, Baldur's Gate 3 got an update, patch 8, right? And with it came the new Warlock subclass called the Hexblade. People loved it. It was instant fan favorite, right? Kind of love, that level. Why? Because it's kind of busted, but in the best way. Normally in D&D, if you're a warlock and you want to summon a magic weapon, something called Pact of the Blade, you can. It looks cool. It's very spooky sword from another dimension vibes, but wasn't actually that good. You still needed to rely on physical stats like strength or dexterity to hit stuff properly in melee, and also need charisma for your spells. So you'd have to spread your points across multiple abilities. Like that, it's a big old headache, right, for most builds. Then you enter the Hexblade, who's like your emo best friend right from level 1. Hexblades let you use your charisma mod, like aka your talk to demons and flirt with danger stat, to attack with melee weapons. So you get to hit stuff hard and then still be smooth talking, spell slinging warlock that you were born to be. Basically, you get to be cool and effective up close and from afar. I guess like if Geralt of Rivia had a bit more sass and a cursed sword with attitude. Now, when the shiny new 2024 Player's Handbook dropped, Hexblade, the fan favourite edgelord subclass, was nowhere to be found. It was kind of sad. Instead, Wizards of the Coast, they gave the spotlight to a different subclass called the Celestial Warlock, which is basically like making a pact with a magical angel or a space grandma who gives you healing powers and cosmic fire. It's nice, but it's not quite spooky sword vibes that we were all hoping for. But don't panic, they didn't forget about Warlocks entirely. Instead of keeping Hexblade around, the devs decided to kind of buff the general Pact of the Blade feature, which is something any Warlock can take now, not just Hexblades. So I guess what's kind of new and improved is that you can now summon your magical weapon as a bonus action. Translation, if you're new, it is kind of like it's fast. It's don't waste your turn to do it kind of action, right? You get to choose your damage type, like slashing, psychic, necrotic, pick your poison, basically. And the big one is that you can now use your charisma to hit and deal damage with that weapon, which means no more juggling multiple stats. You just kind of vibe with your sparkly silver tongue and let your cursed sword do the talking. And they also threw in something called Eldritch Mind, which is like a special warlock perk, aka like an invocation to it kind of makes it easier to keep your magic spells running when you're getting punched in the face in melee combat. You basically get advantage on the checks to stay focused. You're less likely to lose your spell mid-battle. That was hard to say. Think of it like a magical noise-cancelling headphones. You're in the zone even if the orcs are screaming at you. So yeah, Hexblade in name, the vibe kind of lives on with the new 2024 rules, like shaking things up still, I think. I'm arguing still. The Hexblade subclass, I feel like it got ghosted a little bit. I guess even if your Dungeon Master lets you kind of mix and match old books like Xanathar's Guide to Everything with the new stuff, Hexblade feels kind of like it's not really fitting anymore. It's kind of like trying to shove that VHS into a DVD slot. Oh Christ, I'm old. Wizards of the Coast, they did try to bring it back with a fresh spin, obviously in their May playtest, which was Unearthed Arcana, horror subclasses, instead of the old mysterious being from the Shadowfell, which sounded cool. It was vague AF. They gave it a glow up. Now your warlock makes a deal with an ancient sentient magic weapon. So your sword talks back to you. Think Stormbreaker from Thor, but more cursed and judgmental. It does sound cool, sort of, but even though the idea it probably is a 10 out of 10 idea in like fantasy nonsense in the best way, the mechanics, bit of a buzzkill. Instead of letting you swing around your creepy soul-bound weapon like an anime protagonist, the sword basically turned into a floating magic effect, spelly thing that just kind of hovers there and acts like a curse. Cool concept. Most of us were kind of like, wait, I wanted to fight my way with a demon sword and now I just wave it around like a magical mood ring. It's like they took the Hexblade's whole vibe, edgy swordmaster with a dark drip, and then they replaced it with haunted glow stick. It's not quite what fans were hoping for, right? Wizards of the Coast, they then took another crack at fixing the Hexblade Warlock in June's Arcane subclasses playtest, and this time they leaned kind of like harder into making it good for up-close stabby combat. You know, like for warlocks who don't want to stand at the back blasting things like magical snipers. And the cool stuff they added is Hungering Hex, which is basically if you've cursed an enemy, think like I am absolutely going to ruin that guy's day, and that enemy then gets knocked out, you get to heal a bit. It's like emotional revenge snacks, right? But for your hit points. You've then got Unyielding Will, which is once per day. If your concentration gets interrupted, you can just go, nope, and keep it active anyway. Bonus, right? If you do manage to hang onto your spell during a fight, you deal a bit of extra damage. It's kind of like saying, good job, have a fireball punch. Then you get Harrowing Hex from level 6. Now this one's actually, I think it's pretty cool. If you cast a non-cantrip spell, so that's like a bigger one, not just a magical pew pew, you can also do a bonus attack on your weapon in the same turn. Basically, spell first / second. It's very Gandalf meets Geralt vibes, but here's where the new version kind of drops the ball. Still, the original Hexblade, it gave you minimum armor, so you could actually survive running up to enemies and then smacking them, but the new version just vibes in some light armor, which is like showing up to a sword fight in a hoodie. They did it to try and help by adding a feature called a cursed shield, which is supposed to give you a little defensive boost, only if you're not wearing armor. So stay close to the thing you cursed. You're probably going to have to use mage armor, a magical way of like not wearing real armor but still pretending you are. So unless you're doing a very, very specific build like edgy spell guy with no shirt and lots of spells, I don't think it really works. For frontline brawling, right, most melee warlocks would probably still be better off just wearing light armor and spending their cool customization powers, invocations, on things like Pact of the Blade to actually hit stuff with a weapon, Eldritch Mind to make concentrating on spells in the middle of chaos a little less painful. So yeah, the June update, it made some progress. I think we're still waiting on that perfect blend of spells slinging Goth with a cursed sword and solid armor, but right now I guess it's more squishy hex wizard who might survive melee if they believe in themselves really, really hard. So it does make, I guess it makes total sense. I think it makes sense anyway, that the Wizards of the Coast, they've decided to give the Hexblade a proper makeover in the new rules, and they are paying they are paying attention to feedback and sort of what we're saying. So I am kind of intrigued as to where this I can't talk now, as to where this is going. And I'm also intrigued as to what you guys think, because it does divide opinions. I remember a couple of with the May playtest, I think I did a video over on TikTok and it did divide opinions a lot. So please comment and let me know what you think, because if you play a Hexblade like me, how has this affected your play style? Has your DM been lenient? I think it's a good conversation to have. If you made it this far, thank you so much. I'm only going to implore you one time to please do all those things you need to do to support my tiny channel.